2 nights in a row.
Yes.
2 nights in a row, kid. I get it.
I'm hiding tonight.
I would have hid yesterday, not today. No, I'm kidding.
All right, you're good. So Stacy or Colleen, you can call the meeting to order.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this Tuesday, January 12th, 2021 Strategic Planning Committee to order. If we can go ahead and just say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, Brian, we'll go ahead and head it over to you.
So on tonight's agenda, it's active in board docs if you wanted to follow along. We should be short, but wanted to share a couple things related to some data that we're seeing in next week's transition of students, and some other projects that we're working on. Most of the conversation will probably be around the first discussion of the academic calendar dates for next year, and then really what's coming up in the next couple months in terms of strategic planning. So let me share my screen. So you'll see, again, always start off with a mission statement to inspire passion for lifelong learning, one student at a time, and our vision of being an accepting community that unlocks every student's ability to discover and reach their full potential. To begin with, we're going to look at some of the data that we're looking at next week in terms of ins and outs for hybrid students and virtual kids, as we're preparing for this Q3 transition of students. So just as context, our discussions back in November and December were a little bit different, a little, I think, more heightened anxiety of having to make a decision for the rest of the semester. And then we decided to add that additional transition period for the Q4 after spring break. So take that into consideration, along with everything else that's going on in the community right now when we're looking at some of these numbers. So going into our Q3, we actually were staying pretty close to where we were right now. So we're looking at about 30% of the school being remote online learners for the Q3 of the school year. We were right around that for the first semester, with 70% of our students, and this is K through 12, being in person. And again, that was pretty consistent through the whole first semester. We then looked at making sure that our cohorts were as balanced as possible. And we tried to and the principals did a really good job. They looked at all of our existing kids, and our message was that if a student was a hybrid student already and they were staying hybrid, they were going to keep their cohort letter. They were going to stay Monday, Tuesday, or stay Thursday, Friday, or stay green coming 4 days a week, because we know a lot of effort went into parents planning, and we didn't want to change that on them middle of the year. And that we had a group of students, and you're going to see the numbers by grade level, who were remote kids coming back to hybrid, that we said we were going to place them in either the blue or gold cohort based on the balancing of that grade level and their classes the best that we could. It's a little bit easier K to 6. It gets a little bit more difficult in 7 through 12 because you're going through a different schedule with multiple classes. But the principals went through every one of the kids and tried their best to take that into consideration for our building operations and for the classrooms to try to keep class sizes as low as possible and balanced as possible. So going into the Q3, again, we have about 29% of the school in remote learning, and then we really did split 30-30 blue gold, with 10.5% being green coming 4 days a week. So we're looking at 40% of the school being in person Monday, Tuesday, 40% being in person Thursday, Friday, with 30% being and 60% being online on the opposite days. So it's not too bad of a split when they went section by section, teacher by teacher. This is what the grade level looks like by cohort day. So the blue, and these are N counts of kids. So the blue is our A track, which is our virtual students. So you can see, I tried to stack this so that you could see the difference in virtual versus hybrid kids by grade level. B is our blue group, which is coming on Mondays and Tuesdays. C is our gold group, which is coming on Thursdays and Fridays. And D is our green group. I couldn't get the graph to actually do the colors, so I apologize that red is blue and blue is red. That was something I couldn't figure out how to do. But you can see some of the N counts, particularly looking at the B and C groups, which are the yellow and the red colors. Comparing those two numbers in the grade level, we wanted those to be as close as possible. So that was making sure that the grade level was split as close as possible with the number of students who would be coming in person, and then really having to add on the green number to get your total for that day. So and it's interesting where you see, you know, the virtual students, and I think we had these discussions in the summer of who would be our highest group of kids that were going virtual, and you see it more in our upper grade levels with more N counts of students, not necessarily percentage of the class, but with 51 kids in 11th grade being online and 33 seniors. That's our highest number of students. Any questions on this so far? This was the transitions that are going to be happening through into the next quarter. So the first row is the number of students transitioning from remote to hybrid. And so you have 14 kindergartners coming back, 13 first graders. So these were remote students who are transitioning back to hybrid. Really the highest number was our 10th graders in terms of N counts of students and percentage of the grade level coming back, or the percentage of remote students coming back. And then you have the next column was, we do have some students who were hybrid who are choosing to be remote during the third quarter for whatever reason, health and safety, you know, COVID cases in and around the county, personal decisions. So we do have some students who were hybrid transitioning back to remote. And then the last column, the third column, sort of the net return. So that's just the hybrid minus the ones leaving to see sort of what's our net return of kids. You know, we're actually, what I thought was interesting was we're actually have 2 more students leaving 12th grade than coming back. So our seniors, you know, I think that they're pretty comfortable where they're at and are staying the course for the rest of their senior year. And then we looked at all of our K through 6 classrooms that were predominantly self-contained, with nominal transitioning and switching. And they were averaging about 18 hybrid students, then normally split some way between the blue and the gold group, with 7 students being virtual. And again, that's an average between kindergarten and 6th grade. So it doesn't stay true for every section, every teacher, but was the average of them. So this isn't, as you know, in all honesty, I think when we were talking in December, we were very worried that we were going to see a large influx of students returning, because we had that having to be a semester decision that they were making, and that they would have wanted to lock in the ability to have in-person instruction during some part of the spring semester. I think adding that next transition helped parents who were weary of bringing them into school, but we thought were going to make that decision so that they could have some type of in-person instruction, that they're waiting until that April date. And that's why we're not seeing as high of a percentage of our remote students returning this quarter, which helps us operationally in both buildings. So these were numbers that when we were sitting down, we could all work with, and the principals went through all their class lists and are working on that balancing, and then working on our cafeteria and working at the student transitions to make sure that these students who were remote transitioning back to hybrid understand the safety protocols and the expectations that they have now that they wouldn't have been a part of for the entire first semester, and that they're comfortable coming back. And then because we added an additional learning intentions transitions period, we're going to be sending out the form again, most likely the first week of March. It did take us a while to make phone calls to parents. I think originally, after we closed the survey, we had over 300 families who did not complete the form, that we were calling to try to solidify what they were doing, even though we had said if they failed to fill it out, they were going to default back to what their learning modality was for the first semester. We wanted to try to make sure we reached out to as many families as possible to solidify that information. So it did take us a little bit of time, with the transition happening on April 6th, and then working backwards to notifying transportation departments, notifying families, doing the balancing, because I think this is the period that we can probably anticipate a larger return of our remote students to try to get some in-person instruction during the end of the school year, especially at the spring. We're going to send that out shooting for the first week of March. And that'll be for that fourth quarter of April 6th through June 10th. January, February, and the beginning of March is also when we do our intent to return for our existing families. So instead, we just had them fill out a form. We're going to have them fill out another one for the fourth quarter. We didn't want to over survey the families to death. So we are going to add the intent to return question in the quarter 4 learning intentions form. It's a simple, like, yes, are you coming back, or no? And that way we don't, we're not sending out too many things and having to follow up on too many surveys. And we felt that waiting till the first week of March was plenty of time for us to hold off on that survey question, while keeping in mind that we need that information to make accurate seat counts for the 1st through 12th grade lottery poll, which typically happens the 3rd week of March. So 2 weeks of getting some of that intent to return data back should be helpful for our enrollment projections for those seat counts. And then again, we're expecting a larger transition for that quarter 4. So that might be when we have to recall some more furniture and things like that.
Brian, can I stop you here for a
Yep.
second? Colleen and Stacy, do you have any questions? Obviously, this doesn't have to be a big conversation with the board, since the board has approved this next transition, and it's not going to be any problems with us accommodating the amount of kids. Is there anything else that you, as a strategic planning committee, want to see at the board meeting? We thought there might be a lot more conversation around this based on kids, but based on what we have here, we really don't have any problems, unless you can articulate something that we're not catching or that you want to see.
I think being able, Kristen, I don't have any personal concerns, but I think being able to articulate the concerns addressed, about cafeteria size, I think being prepared to sort of, obviously you've done your planning on that and you're very comfortable with that. I think it's just important to reiterate that it's still within the, 6 feet whenever possible. I think that common language supports, again, that, and I think just to also, to me, to commend your efforts of, when you're a small school, you're able to look at all the students and their individual circumstances. And I think, again, that is huge. You're not going to make everybody happy. But again, you're offering an opportunity for students who do want to transition back. So I think just maybe those questions I think that came up before, are you going to have enough space? Is there space in those smaller classrooms? I think just sharing that's important, just to reiterate it.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. My only question was because I have the little guy. So my only question, what Brian addressed it, is just sort of that making sure that the kids that are coming in understand, because the guys that have been there since October know the deal. You know what I mean? They wear their masks, they know they know how to carry their thingies, their
Mhm.
shields and stuff like that. So just sort of making sure that, because even for the older kids, that it's not negotiable, that like this is what we have to do. So just, I guess that sort of, maybe those things just need to be reiterated with the kids when they come back, because I know at the beginning there was a lot of time spent on that with the kids as they came in.
Agreed. Okay.
So.
I mean, I do know that the teachers and the kids were getting a little too comfortable towards the end before Christmas. So when they came back from New Year's Eve, there was another like, let's not get too comfortable here. Let's remember the health and safety plan. And so there is way more reminders than I thought we would need to have at this time, but it never hurts for even the kids that have been there to hear it again. So I agree with you, Colleen. Just curious with the teachers on, this is the first time they're hearing it. Now Thursday, I'll touch a little bit upon some of this at the roundtable, but is there any questions or concerns for teachers so that I can know and we can talk about it at the roundtable?
There's been questions, and it's a little slightly off topic, but not really, about the dashboard.
That's on there. I got that through COVID questioning, and there's some misunderstandings. So I have a whole slide devoted to the dashboard.
Okay.
Because there is a very misunderstanding or misconcept about rolling 14 days and what that means and when they get put in the cumulative versus when they're in the actual positive in your building.
Right.
So we'll go through all of that.
Okay.
Yep. Nobody's hiding anybody. I can tell you that right now. This has been the worst week that we've had so far, if you're wondering.
Good to move on.
I think so. Anybody else?
I'm actually super surprised at some of those numbers, Brian, that you've said, because right now my biggest class is 4 kids. So I was surprised that that they're that high. Actually.
You're lucky.
My
Yeah.
room gets pretty full.
I was going to say, don't tell anyone that.
So I make up for it, Marielle.
Okay, because I'm like, I mean, I span 9 through 12, but even especially with those 12, with that many kids, I mean, well, I guess 11th really of 51 kids.
Right. Well, and if you're
I don't
looking
live in my classrooms, apparently.
if you're looking at like on this slide, say your juniors on Thursday, Friday, there's only 34 kids coming in. And when you have 11th grade English and there's 5 sections of it split across 34 kids, you know, it's like averages of averages of averages as you're going down that line.
Yeah.
It's your elementary self-contained where those K-6 teachers who you're saying like, we really wanted to try to look at those to say, all right, you're with these kids all day. Let's try to get this to be 10 and 10, 12 and 10, when you're looking at like 24 hybrid kids from a teacher, so that that was as even a split as possible. It's a lot harder in high school, and that's where we just tried to say, if we can try to split the grade level the best that we can, it'll kind of all come out in the wash. Some will be higher, like Marie's, and some will be lower, like yours. But we were trying to look at, you know, if we can, and I know Dr. Malin was talking about trying to do those caps of 15s, and if we can look at the track balancing reports in Power School and making sure there's no section over 15, that was really the goal. So one teacher, you might have 15 one day, but 3 the other, and it was like, okay, we're okay with that, because it kind of was where it was. That's not the best as the teacher, right? Like one day I have 15 kids and the next day I only have 3, and that's super awkward. So
I assume these numbers include all the people that over the course of the last 2 months or whatever that have gone virtual. That includes them in red, correct?
So this is whatever decision that they're making to start on January 25th.
All right.
So if it was a person who said I wanted to go virtual, but I'm coming back hybrid on the 25th, then they would be in these hybrid numbers. So this was all all those numbers.
Are those, the one that, the form that Dr. Maitland sent out that had all the people that were coming back? Did those include the people who went red but then are coming back, or just the new people? Do you
It
know? 'Cause
would-
I didn't have any of those.
It should have included everybody. So again, and I think
Like, we only
that
got a
I
list
think
of like new people, but I don't know if those new people included the people who might have gone red but now have chosen to come back in January.
I know that Jen Schmidt
sense?
we loaded all of this into Power School today so that teachers will be able to run their roster reports to see what their breakdown is. So you'll be able to see that. And again, we're getting phone calls now of switching and things like that. So it's pretty fluid, probably even through that first week of it, where, you know, people get cold feet or come for a couple days and have bad anxiety about it and want to go back out. So it's a fluid thing.
Okay.
Okay. Next on the agenda was another project that we're working on, and it actually got brought up on the parent forum the other day. So we partnered with, and Kristen had alluded to this, I think, in the last board meeting, and committed us to a project that was going to be completed by
Bruto.
by March.
It was a done deal, Bruto.
So we partnered with Peapod Design, which is a company that does virtual tours. So a representative from their company, a photographer, is going to be coming out to State Road and ELC either next Wednesday or next Friday, weather permitting. And what the individual is going to do is we've come up with a location list of both campuses, and he's going to come and he's going to take 360-degree panoramic photos of the locations, and basically build us a virtual tour of both of our campuses to help right now with tour requests that we're getting, but we're trying to limit that as much as possible due to COVID, and for our marketing and enrollment moving forward. So I thought I would pull up an example. So this is an example of one that is a private school that they did. So it comes with a nice little welcome message. And basically, they come and they do the photography, and we will have these sort of really nice high definition panoramic views of different areas of our campus. And then in each of the tour areas, there are hotspots that you can add photo galleries, scrolling photo galleries. You can add additional text, or you can actually add videos. And you can kind of go through and take a nice, there's descriptions of each of the areas. This is a nice private school, but we would have something put together like this for both of our campuses. I looked at a couple different vendors, and what was really nice about Peapod, not only was it the lowest cost quote that I got back, but Peapod actually, once the project's done, we own the project and we host the project, where a lot of the college tours that you'll see being made, the company that makes it, like UDesign was one where UDesign owns your photos and owns your tour, and you have to pay a monthly or yearly subscription to run the tour. This is a one-time project cost, and then we own the tour, and then we can keep going back to them to make updates or do reshoots. If portions of our building change, they will come back and reshoot and then add it and update our tour for us. But it's something that we own, and there's not any ongoing costs with it. So we have a list of locations that he's going to be coming in next week. It's either going to be Wednesday or Friday when students aren't there. And then we have some prep work that we're doing in the areas, and then the teachers' rooms who we're going to be photographing are going to get an email tomorrow about some help and things that we need from them. The goal is that we're going to try to make the spaces not look like COVID classrooms, because this is really a like look into the future for marketing and enrollment. And we're not going to be in this 6 feet of social distancing and plexiglass on elementary classroom tables forever. So we do have a little bit of prep work that we've already coordinated with the facilities department, and then reaching out to teachers tomorrow. Marie, you're one of them.
And the other thing, we definitely are having them back in the spring. So there's some rooms we even just said, we're not gonna let you do until the spring. And we do want better pictures of the farm and better pictures of the front of the school when it's nice out versus muddy and all of those things. So we are gonna do as many rooms as we can to start getting pictures and video up so parents can see it, with the intent that we are definitely gonna do it again. If not the spring, probably early August, early September, when school starts and classrooms are ready and things like that. So it will be something that we revisit.
But wanted to try to get it done now so that we could have something up for this spring enrollment period, for parents to be able to see.
And this is something that's been on our list to do. It just never got done. And now there's the urgency because of not being able to see the school. Maggie just had her first kindergarten meeting tonight and said that they did ask a lot of questions about safety and cleaning. Maggie, right?
Yeah, they had a lot of questions about numbers of students in the classroom and how are we going to ensure safety. So I reviewed everything we do now. I said many of the things we're going to keep in place with regards to like the hand sanitizers and just the wipes, and making sure we, reiterate always about, making sure we're staying clean and safe no matter what. But they really were concerned about, how to keep their kids safe. And then it was things about bathrooms and how can can other people get in the building? So a lot of safety things like that, but COVID questions about cleaning the school.
So we'll continue to post our COVID video too for new families, so they can see the PPE and safety equipment and things that we've invested in for their safety no matter what. So that will be also something we continue to show. Any questions or anything they want to add to that?
Kristen, I think it would be, I remember just last year, this time, or even earlier in the year, just some of those facilitated sort of discussions we had with strategic planning and it sounds like you've already done your due diligence on highlighting the parts of what make the school unique. And I know that that's exactly the mission that this is sort of, hopefully we'll be able to show people what makes our school unique. But I think that's going to be really a critical piece, because it is always marketing our school of how do you sell our school, especially when, Maggie's talking about classroom size. I know that always comes up. People have this vision and idea of what they think it should look like. But I think those kind of things really will help support what we want to highlight about the school, and really giving that feel, that we know what that feel is, but trying to be able to show it with really good, high quality pictures and videos. So it sounds like a really good continuation of that project that sort of got put on hold. So I'm happy to see that.
And it'll be I mean, I've given some of the tours before. I think all the administrators have, and really, I think parents will get a lot from this compared to walking the building, because when we're walking the building during a school day with tours, you can't really go into a classroom. Like you awkwardly stand at the door, and I open up Mrs. Eagle's room and she's like, oh, who's here? And the kids all turn around, and it's like an awkward 30 seconds while a parent gets to peek into a room real quick. And so they get to walk the hallways and they get to see the exterior, but they don't really get to spend time, scanning the auditorium or getting a layout or seeing inside the classrooms here and there. So, we're looking at photographing, I think it was like 36 different locations between the two campuses. So they'll have a good exposure to both buildings that way.
And we were even talking, Brian and I, about the videos and having kids talk about the space. It's so powerful when kids say what these spaces mean to them versus the adults. So trying to get more kids involved in that video production of what we're using the space for, like the
So
collaboratory and things like that.
yeah, so the launch of this will be sort of in a draft form, to get something out there, and then we can continue to do the video curation and the photo curation and keep kind of adding to it even after it's published. All right. The other one is just a real quick one because it was part of our current strategic or comprehensive plan that we had on there, and we're finally getting to it. So I reached out to the art department, and this spring and going into next year, we're working on looking at our performing and visual arts courses and the performance standards that they sort of have going out of some of our level 2 classes, like photo 2, video 2, graphic design 2, yearbook, some of the higher classes in our performing and visual arts group, and aligning that to the Adobe Certified Associate exams. So the kind of in a nutshell would be at the end of these courses, we would be saying that our students are prepared to sit and complete an industry credential exam so that they can elect to take it, and then they could exit the course and leave Avon Grove Charter School with an actual industry grade credential and being Adobe certified. So they would be then being able to put that on their college applications or their resumes if they're going directly into the workforce to say, I'm certified in Photoshop, I'm certified in InDesign, for those that are going into some type of visual arts or graphic design field. So right now we're working in Photoshop, aligning Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and InDesign for these kids, and the goal would be that it would be available to them going into next year. So just an update, as that was something that was on our current comprehensive plan, which is coming to an end here this summer.
And we're starting back up again in March.
Yep, so I have a timeline at the last slide, and this is also something that the schools evaluated on. So the schools evaluated on the percentage of 12th graders who leave high school with a work-based learning experience and or an industry grade credential. So right now we only report students based on their NIMS or their NOCTI exams who go to the technical college. We don't have a program that has any credentialing in-house. So this was one area that we offer a host of courses that would prepare students for a set of exams that the Department of Education has deemed industry credential. Any questions? Cool. All right, next one. Let me switch. So the next portion I'm going to share is 3 draft calendars for the 21-22 school year. So it's around this time that we start to have those discussions of what does the calendar look like next year. Right now, Avon Grove School District is the only school that we have of sending schools that has their calendars published for next year. And Avon Grove School District did that because of their high school building project. So we do have what their school year looks like next year, but that doesn't mean that we have to follow them day for day, given that we have some different. We have kids coming from a bunch of different districts, and we have our own goals and timelines for things. So the 3 calendars that I'm going to share, Colleen and Stacy, I did put copies of them in the administrative content for the meeting, but going to share these visually. After tonight, I'm going to be sending out an invite to Quest to meet with Quest to get additional feedback from our teaching staff about the calendars, and then would be looking either potentially at the January work session or the February work session to discuss with the board after sending it out for them for feedback and review, with a vote goal for February or for at the latest March.
And I know the board really isn't going to want to dive deep into a conversation around the calendar if they have a recommendation from the strategic planning committee. So if we want to work out, what the one is the strategic planning committee is recommending, that would help in the conversation with the board and even Quest to say, hey, the strategic planning committee is recommending this specific calendar.
And our meeting we will meet again before the February board meeting. So we can always put it on our agenda again for February to loop back after there's some time to digest. And we've had that conversation with Quest. So the first one, this is the one that is closest to Avon Grove School District. And I'm going to kind of just go through and I'll try to make this big enough so that it all fits in one window so that you can, and I'll go through some of the highlights. So the first thing is the start of school. Start of schools they have is August 23rd, which is extremely early. It's 2 weeks early, or 2 weeks prior to Labor Day, a week earlier than we would typically go back, which is the week before Labor Day. Avon Grove's doing this because it gets them out earlier. They would actually end school per their calendar prior to Memorial Day, so that they have a longer summer for construction. We have listed September 16th as a teacher in service, which is Yom Kippur. Election Day off in November 2nd. Closed for conferences and in-service the 22nd and 23rd of November. So the kids would have off the whole week of Thanksgiving, and we would have teacher in-service and conferences on those 2 days. Half day on the 23rd. Next year's is the year when Christmas falls and we only have like a week off. So that kind of stinks. But a couple years from now, it'll fall on a Wednesday. January was your in-service after Martin Luther King Day. Nothing through February, closed President's Day. I did school closed for conferences and in-service on March 3rd and March 4th. I know this year we had published those asynchronous days with conferences. The reason that we were able to do that this year is because of the governor's emergency declaration. We probably won't have that flexibility next year. So we had those listed as closed non-student days. Normal spring or our spring break as it is now, with Thursday, Friday, and an in-service Monday. And then your last day of school, being Thursday, June 2nd, which is a half day with teacher in service on the 3rd. That gives us our 180 days of students, and it's 192 staff calendar. Some things just that we kind of talked about with this, that nothing that would be out of the question from an operations standpoint. The end of the year here is really tight with Keystone exams and projected final exams for high school kids, and then going on a long Memorial Day holiday, and then coming back for 3 days, and then having to have final grades wrapped up, seniors grades wrapped up. That is a tight window. It's not impossible, but we will have to relook at what final exams look like in conjunction of happening almost at the same time as Keystone exams. Any questions about those? Oh, and just so that everybody's aware, for the sake of the calendar conversation, I know this is something that we haven't talked a lot about because it really doesn't apply to this year. But going into next year, our flexible instructional day application was approved. So we would have those 5 flexible days for inclement weather, where we wouldn't have to tack on snow days to the end of the year. We could have virtual or asynchronous flexible school days on inclement weather, up to 5 of them.
And just because, Colleen, you're new to the strategic planning committee, FID discussions have been happening with the strategic planning committee for, I would say, 2 years at least. Brian, is that a good estimate?
Marie, when was the first time you asked me about flexible days? 2015?
I think it was your second day
Yeah.
working at Avon Grove Charter School.
There you go.
First day standing up in front of all of
Yeah.
us.
All
So
right.
can we have virtual snow days?
All right, so we've been talking about it for a very long time and then really getting serious about it in the last 2 to 3 years and finally have gotten through the application. And then it's finally time. We didn't even actually, it's we have it, we don't have to use it, and we can have a virtual snow day and everybody loses their mind that we're not letting kids play in the snow. So it was very confusing. But what I will say to you is that during the roundtable, I will have a conversation with teachers so that we remind them what a FID day looks like. So I know that this is something that's not new to teachers. They already know. It's been something we've been discussing for multiple years, but I do understand because of it being an online year and there was some confusion about what will FID days look like, I will remind them at the roundtable what FID days will look like.
And the application was very specific. So like even what we're able to do now with the flexibility from the governor's emergency declaration is different than what the legislation for the flexible instructional day requires. So while similar, going into next year, assuming that the emergency declaration expires, we'll have some different requirements on how we can facilitate, implement, and then track and report what happens on a flexible instructional day.
And as I told my children, you can still learn and play in the snow in the same day. It just might mean less video game time.
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you, Marie.
If anybody needs a coworker pep talk on why they should
It's hot in June.
absolutely be instituted, please let me know. I
Yeah.
refrain from commenting on the parent forum,
Yes.
but I'm happy to have a conversation.
And it's the same teachers and parents that will be very happy when we get out early in June because we had those days count. So is that a brain match, Marie, that you just
No,
said?
that was don't jinx it.
Oh. Okay.
Brian, is this something that you have to reapply for every year?
No, so it's a 3-year, so we're good for the 2021, 2022. We were good for this year, but doesn't really matter. And then 21, 22, 22, 23, and then we have to reapply. So the next 2 school years were approved. All right, so that's calendar 1. Calendar 2 is more traditional to what we have done and has half days in. So this has us starting back the 30th of August, which is that 4-day week before Labor Day. Yom Kippur off. We did for a year or two have an October in service. So this had an October in service in here to kind of give the kids and the teachers another break there. Election day off. The 22nd and the 23rd of November would be early dismissal conference days, so that we were able to count those 2 days as school days. Half day on the 23rd. Christmas still fell where it falls. Martin Luther King Day off the 18th. Nothing in February but President's Day. And then doing, again, early dismissal conference days on the 2nd and the 3rd of March with a teacher in service on the 4th, so that we're able to count those 2 days of school. Spring break stayed the same, and the last day of school moved from Thursday the 2nd to Tuesday the 7th. So it's still early in June. You're not into that 3rd week of June, but what this does is it starts the school year 5 days later. We make up a couple of those in offering half days and conferences versus no school and conferences, and there's an October in service in there. And then we come back again at 180 student days, but only 190 staff days. So it goes from 192 on the last one to 190 on this one because of the half days. Questions? They're pretty straightforward. Okay. And the last one was kind of a combination of 1 and 2, where we would start on the 30th. You'd have Yom Kippur off on the 16th. There would be no October in-service day. We would do in-service and conferences in November. So school closed for kids. They're off all week. But you have teacher in-service and conferences. Holiday breaks are the same. School closed in March on the 3rd and the 4th, and it's in-service and conferences. And that is the latest that we would get out in June, which is still that second week of June, but which would be Thursday the 9th. So this is a little bit of sacrificing a couple extra days in June for the breaks through the year. And that goes back to a 180, 192, because school would be closed on those conference days as opposed to having half days. So, we're not voting, just, any feedback, ideas, concerns. I really love this one.
Yeah.
I really hate this one.
I'm curious.
Have you thought about this?
I'm
Just
curious. if the
putting it in
teachers have-
that second week, is that enough time? Brian, you said how smushed that first one was with the finals and stuff. Does getting it like to the 7th as opposed to the 9th, does that help? Or does it really
yeah,
need the 9th?
I think even if we can make anything work, right? Like I think there's trade-offs to any calendar. So the first one being really great because we get out early in the summer.
But you're giving it up on
however, but you're also going back earlier, right? So you're shortening this summer to then get out earlier the following June. And while that's, hey, we get out early in June, we're going to have to really look at what May 16th to June 2nd is going to look like for our high school kids. That's going to be a sprint to the finish with state testing, finals, closing senior grades. What is we might have to have a discussion of, does graduation have to occur after the last day of school, just because, you're butting up against the Memorial Day holiday there.
There's just not enough time.
Yeah. How does that all play out? But we can work around those things. But in any of them, you're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul for it.
Do we ever do? I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. I was going to say when Avon Grove always says to us, we ask the board to stay as closest to our school calendar as you can because of transportation. So the board usually does say, is this close to Avon Grove's, because they know it means something to them. However, Chris Marchese is well aware that asking our school to go back in the middle of August and being done by the end of May is really hard for any school. So
Well,
I
we
don't
don't
think
have a
he's
reason.
expecting it. What's
Like, I
that?
get that they have a reason. So
Exactly.
that,
So it really is about, it's really about, the flexibility of how much do we want to align to support them, and what makes most for us, really what makes most sense for the kids and the teachers. And if that means our calendar should look drastically different or it can look somewhat different, I think that's the discussion.
And I think, the demographics have changed over time, where, initially Avon Grove had the majority of the students, and just, it's really changed over the past several years. So you're looking at the coming as close to, if they're the only ones starting super early and everyone else is looking at that August 30th date, it falls in line with maybe the majority of your students.
I don't think that part of it really matters. I mean, we're still almost half Avon Grove, but really them being our authorizer is really about what that's about having the relationship.
Yeah.
But I honestly, he's well aware that him asking us to have a calendar where you're going back in the middle of August and you're finishing at the end of May is unrealistic. That
Yeah.
we know he's doing that for the project. And we should do what works for our kids. I know we had a conversation about, wanting more professional development time and trying to add some more time for teachers. And then that caused something for him because he was paying for more days and things like that. So, we always go tit for tat when it comes to those kind of things, but I think we all understand that that's an unrealistic request. So
Yeah. And they
that's
shared
part
that
of the
last
discussion.
year. I remember us having this discussion. They had already launched like the next 3 years worth of calendars based
Mhm.
upon construction plans, and they weren't budging on them.
Right. And he understood that we weren't approving 3 years of school calendars. And I will be honest, like facilities they always want more time in the
Yeah,
summer. But that's not gonna hurt.
This is
Right.
tough for facilities here.
Right.
I guess
So-
one thing I notice, I like the third one, and there is a little bit of collaboration with Avongroves because we would not require busing if we're closed in November and March for conferences. So that would be 4 days where busing wasn't needed. And I do this year being able to do conferences by Zoom, and I'm assuming that will be on the table as a discussion item. Having those days were really productive with families, having designated days and doing them virtually. I just felt they were so much more productive when people came in person. So the idea of having days devoted to that without really quick 20-minute classes is appealing to me academically too.
That's good feedback, Bonnie. I appreciate that.
I would say I don't know. I guess I'm not sure because my guys are just young. So I know that in the fall, it's pretty standard, at least at our level, that everybody has conferences. And then in the spring, it's more of if the teacher requests it. Is that pretty standard? So that in the spring, are there not as many conferences? Is that a true assumption that I'm making?
For high
Yeah.
school, yes, that's true.
Okay. So what I'm wondering, like, is there I think it makes sense to have the days off in November, but maybe like in March, do you do half days? I certainly understand that because if there just aren't as many conferences, then maybe you can sort of split the difference. I don't know whether that makes like a huge deal either way, but
you still end up having to have that time available, and then we just end up having dead time in between
them.
Yeah, but we certainly use the time. I guess my main thing was just that really is a week of busing. So even though we're starting 2 weeks later than them, we're really only having a change of 1 week of busing. And as a teacher, I don't know how the other teachers feel, but I think half days feel very useless a lot.
Even as a student, I remember them feeling that way.
That's just to get the day in.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand.
And Colleen, it's easy for like elementary school, you have your 26 kids and you try to get through that.
But
And
high
yet-
school,
But high school, they have hundreds, 100 and whatever kids.
Yep.
And you're trying to squeeze in the ones that want conferences in that spring. So it's a little different for them because they have so many that might request it, that might be struggling, where an elementary school teacher with her 26 doesn't have as many. Does that
Right.
make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. That's why I'm asking, because I have a very
Yeah.
I would actually agree with Bonnie on the third personally. The first option, not only does it start really early, but I think those days, the 31st of May, June 1st, and half of June 2nd are going to be completely useless days. Like after coming off of a long weekend and then having 2.5 days, there's not really anything that can get done then.
Well, I think the hope there would be that everything is pretty much wrapped up by
Which
the
we
time
can
we
use
leave for Memorial Day anyways.
Yeah.
That your Keystone testing, any final exams that would happen, and almost all your grades are in, or you're doing some final final grade reporting that 31st and 1st, but not much is happening anyways.
But if we did it late, like in version 3, you could get through keystones and then still do final exams that week of the last day of May and the first week of June.
Yep.
Right?
And then you still have a couple days to rectify and your grade books and things like that. That gives the buffer. That's just the latest into June that you'd be going with those. And that's why we were playing with that 7th on this one or 9th on the other. You could move this back even to the 6th if you got rid of the October in service, but it's like bringing the kids back for a half a day on a Monday. It seemed kind of pointless. And it figured we would throw in that in-service day in October again for a break.
But it doesn't seem that late since we do have those flexible instruction days, and we are pretty certain that we wouldn't have to go a week or so after that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that would be the last day, right? So it's not like June 9th is forever into June.
Right, and June 1st is a Wednesday, with the 30th being a Thursday. So you have almost 3 full weeks after that. June 1st wasn't Sunday.
The only other like minor point I would say is, given this and last school year, there might be families who want their kids to go to school early just to get back on the school train. That's just, I don't feel like that, but there might be some anxious to start the school year and see that as a good thing.
That's funny. That's what I said. I said you might have some who want to go back, and I think Jen said no, have them have as long a summer as possible, because it would be like, oh, we had such a year this year. Let's have a long summer. So Bonnie, you and I looked at it the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jen. That's what I would want, but I know some parents might see that coinciding with Avongrove might be good for that reason too. They can use that to
Avongrove's building. Do you have any clue? Have they talked about the fact the following year, like when they're trying to open their school for the beginning of that year, are they trying to open even later that year to give them even a long summer?
There you want to, once we're done, I can show, it's all public on Avongrove's
Oh, it is. Okay.
website. You can get their 21-22 and 22-23 calendars.
Okay, I can look it up.
Okay, well, I took some notes, and then again, I'm going to be sending out an invite to Quest to gather some additional feedback. But again, they're pretty straightforward. It's more of what do we want to do with those conference days, and then what do we feel comfortable with in terms of an end of year focus. Not that we have to belabor a Tuesday or a Thursday in the second week of June, but.
So Brian likes when I drop little bombs at the end of his meeting. So I'm going to do that real quick. But I was thinking
I'm gonna turn my
that
video off.
So obviously in March, we'll start diving back into the comprehensive plan to make new goals for our 5-year plan. And when Brian and I and the directors, Ryan and Jen, have looked through the comprehensive plan, we really did, as a strategic planning committee, attack a lot of those goals. And so we should really be proud of ourselves of the things we've accomplished. So we'll be diving into that. At the facilities committee last night, Donna is working with me and facilities on a 3, 5, 10-year plan for facilities projects. And we really kind of by June have to lock down where our next big facilities project is going. And I bring that up to the strategic planning committee because one of the things that is going to have to be decided by June by this committee is whether we're building, adding modulars, or looking at Fred S for our high school. Those 2 modulars are leaving, no matter what. That's our next big goal. Okay. So our current architects are looking at being a part of this facilities plan, and the board will get that from the facilities committee. And what I asked him is to prioritize the options that we've explored for the last 2 years so that the strategic planning committee could see all 3 options on the table, the cost, what it would look like, so that we can really talk about this in the next couple months and make a recommendation to the board as here's the one the strategic planning committee is recommending, and we'd like to see the finance committee and the board really consider, and how we can get facilities and finance and how we can get there. So I know I'm just throwing little hints out there, but I want you to know that that is a big goal for us as a committee in this spring, so that we can have a real recommendation for before the end of the school year. And I know COVID has kind of been distracting us a while, but we really kind of got to lock that in. So I just wanted to mention that because the facilities committee did, and you'll be hearing some of it in the board meeting, and the strategic planning committee will play a big part in that. So that was just really an announcement.
That's super exciting.
It is exciting. I'm excited for the next big endeavor.
I need a break.
Be quiet, Bruno.
Next on the list was just a quick point of discussion, and we don't have to go too much into this, but the directors were meeting recently and starting to have conversations about summer and what we are anticipating and looking at in terms of potential learning gaps and what do we need to do in terms of summer offerings going into June to make available to some of our kids. So it really had just started, but it's going to be an important topic really over the next 2 months as Ryan's working through ESY eligibility, and we're looking at our winter benchmarking that's occurring right now, and where our kids are at, and then how do we leverage some of the summertime to allow for continued learning opportunities, and what's reasonable and what can we create that's engaging for the kids to want to do, knowing that, since last March, they haven't been learning the way that they are used to learning. I don't know if Jen or Ryan, you want to go into anything. I wasn't going to go real
reason
deep
why you're
into
not
it.
saying the word retention, or
I wasn't going
Yes.
to.
There is a reason.
okay.
No, we just feel as though, like, as an administrative team, that there may be some families that want more summer learning opportunities as a result of the spring and this current school year not being a typical year. So we're looking at putting together basically a menu of options for families to choose from based on their needs, based on their kids' needs, that they can kind of pick and choose what works for them. But it's a little more, there's going to be more opportunities than just your typical summer learning packets or summer learning reading. We'd like to do a better job of providing more instructional opportunities for families over the summer if they choose to participate. So I think we're going to talk about that the next board meeting next week, or the work session next week.
Yep. Anything else you want to say, Kristen?
No, thanks.
Okay.
I think
and
I
then-
did enough today.
and then again, just kind of upcomings. We also started, along with the summer learning, having to start to have conversations about sort of school for 21-22 school year. There's obviously going to be parents who are still going to want a remote or virtual option for their kids going into next year. And what does that look like for us, and what is feasible and moving forward? Are we able to, and accommodate that, and what does it look like? So that's conversations that have been happening for our February. So and then right now we have to start to do the actual comp planning, because it's due November of 2021, but can be submitted as early as July. So next month, I thought we would look at our current comprehensive plan and see where we were at, like Kristen was mentioning, and any outstanding items that we had that we might have to put into the discussion of going into the next plan. And that will go very quickly. In March, Jen needs to talk about a federal programs budget during our strategic planning. And then this was kind of the timeline. So in our comprehensive plan, we have to do, for this one, a strategic plan. We have to do a standards and assessment requirements evaluation. We have to do student services assurances. We have to resubmit our induction plan, which is up, as well as our professional development plan. So it's kind of like the perfect storm of all of the plan requirements coming to fruition in one plan. I just said plan a lot, but there's a bunch of different layers to this one. So I was looking at February and March being reviewing some of the needs assessment information that we had from previous discussions. And we've done a lot of this already. I don't really feel like we have to go and survey people to death again, because we were doing it last spring and not much has changed in terms of what we need to work on, because most of our year this year was really focused on COVID. And then looking at strengths, challenges, and action planning. July, hopefully being our 28 day public review period, with a board vote in August. Because what's nice about this plan is it aligns a little bit better. Usually the plans have to be submitted in November, and they don't start until the following July, like November 21, and it would start July of 2022. Because we got a delay, our plan will actually be the plan we put together for November would actually be July through June. So we would actually be like making a plan and doing it and starting it right away, as opposed to having to wait 7 months, which I think is much easier to operate that way.
And just for fun, next year's charter renewal too.
Yep.
It's
So
gonna
we
be
got that coming.
We'll go from COVID to planning year. I love it.
And that's all I had. So any other questions, topics that need to be discussed, feedback, around the horn, good of the order? It's 8:30, we could all just go to bed.
Mm.
All right, then I guess Colleen or Stacy, you guys can call the meeting to close.
All right, we can go ahead, and there was no public comment, so we can go ahead and close out the meeting. It's 8:39 p.m. Thank you, everyone.